What's up guys, this is going to be a short video on how to prepare for Smogon tournaments, so I guess this is sort of directed at people who have played a lot on the ladder and want to make their way into tournaments. More specifically, OLT3 is starting soon, so I thought this would help a few people who'll be using that as their first tournament. So to me the biggest difference between playing on the ladder and playing in a tournament is that you know who your opponent is ahead of time, so that gives you the ability to prepare specifically for them. I think building counter teams is really stupid. My approach when I played in tournaments, at least, well, I played my first tournament in the first OLT, and I didn't really prepare specifically for people then. But then once I got into SPL and World Cup, after that I was building to suit my opponents without counter teaming them. So yeah, the other obvious difference is that you don't need to spend as much time in a tournament game feeling out how bad your opponent is, because they're probably quite good, although even really experienced players will choke, so you can't always expect them to just make the best play possible. But yes, preparing I think is the biggest difference. So using OLT as an example, the first thing you want to do once you know who your opponent is go back to this tournaments page. I'll try to show you how to navigate the Smogon forums as well, because that was a bit of a mystery to me for a while. So yes, there is already a logs and replays thread for this tournament, and the best way to prepare for people, in my opinion, is to look at their replays and see what kind of teams they like to use. But say your opponent, I'm going to be using Kosimon80 as an example because he has a lot of replays and tournament experience, and I don't think he's in this tournament, so I won't be like doing his opponent a huge favor by making this video, although I don't intend to be too specific with my tips. So say your opponent is Dan3, you will want to go through all of the is this a thread? Yes, this is a thread. Go through the threads like this and find when they qualified. So if it's this guy or John Yu, whatever, you know your opponent's this guy, so you see that he qualified with this name, so you can go to the Smogon replays thread and see whether he saved any replays. Now some people are a little bit crafty and they sign up with this name, but then they like ladder with it like this, or they put like some character in there, which is totally fine, but it means that their replays won't be under this name. So yeah, this guy has no replays. He might have put like a star in his name or something, but that's great. So if you're playing this guy, that would be quite unlucky because you just wouldn't have really anything to go by. Maybe John Yu would be a better example, and I don't think this guy has played in tournaments before, so in that case he'd probably just want to bring some teams that you're comfortable with, but be aware that he can easily do this and look up your replays as well. So if he knows you love to, here we go, John Yu, not as experienced despite playing way more tournament games. So he's using this, some pretty standard balance. It's not obvious which is, well, the Mega is obviously low punny because non-Mega low punny is inviable unless you're Chimpact. So yeah, AV Metagross, Clefable, you're probably not going to have much success with a Lati against this team. And then we have the same team. So this is, to me, a really important step because the teams they used to ladder might not be their best teams, but they're the most recent teams they've been using, and that'll give you some insights, if nothing else. So yes, look at their replays, and then if you have like a more experienced player, such as Nintendi, who's not super experienced, but he played in World Cup most recently and in OST, you can go back to tournaments and look for their World Cup replays. And of course this is reliant on you knowing something about Smogon and who's played, in tournaments recently. So Nintendi, you can just search his name up here and then find these 3 games. So what is he using? He loves to use this. Oh, that's Badoosh, sorry. He likes to use this. This is a very standard team, which is, I guess, helpful here. Another just like side point is that you should Well, to me at least, the ladder is not very important, so you can easily use it as just like a testing ground. So if you feel like using Victini one day and just want to have a little bit of fun, that's fine. You can use Victini on the ladder. And then maybe you'll like come up against some opponent a few weeks later, and this is a bad example because these people both have Heatran. But I guess then you could use Focus Blast Victini. But like, if you see that your opponent, you won't look at a team and see it as a Victini weak team unless you've played with Victini. And so yeah, using weird stuff on the ladder is always a good idea because you just give yourself that extra weapon when it comes time to prepare for people. But yeah, going back to Cosine. Oh well, I didn't mean to actually look at Cosine's replays here, but yeah, I thought Cosine would be a good example because he has played a lot of games and he's not playing in this OLT, as far as I know, and I think he may actually be not playing any more tournaments, so that would be great if I could not do him a disservice by using him as the example here. But yeah, you want to prepare for your opponent, so where is this? Okay, so the first thing I've done is gone through Cosine's recent replays. You should have some... They should be... Like, if they're a year old, it's probably from a different metagame. So a year ago, or what was happening even 6 months ago, Hooper was in the tier. And so as soon as Hooper goes, that's a big difference. You don't need to bring, like, offensive teams. You don't need to bring Hooper checks, so that gives you a whole lot of freedom and imposes other restrictions on your team building. So if you're taking information from a long time ago, it's not going to be as relevant. You don't want to be preparing for teams that they were using ages ago. So you first just go to their replays, find as many teams as you can. I haven't put in a whole lot of extra info here, but obviously if he was your opponent, you'd want to know all of the sets. So is this Scarf, or is this Specially Defensive? Does it have Wish, or is it like Stealth Rock Healing Wish? How fast is this Rotom? Is this Scarf or Banded Titar? How fast is this Heracross? Is this Choice Laddie or Defog? What the fuck are you trying to beat? And then you're going to want to look for some trends in this. So at the moment, this is just a big chunk of text, and that's what it's meant to look like, because you haven't really done anything to break this down. So you can either go into your team builder and build all of these teams, which would be a helpful thing for me, because then you can easily visualize them. If you want to take that a step further, you can even rearrange the teams. So like the Mega's in this spot, the Bulky Ground is in the second spot, the Steel is here, for example, blah, 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 blah. And that would definitely help me, because then you can just go, oh look, he has Lando on like 5 teams, he has Mega Lopunny, Mega Diancie more often than the other ones, and so on. And yeah, but another way is to just, there it is, just like color code everything in your text document, and that'll help you visualize it as well, so you can see straight away 3 Ferrothorns, lots of Lando T's, lots of Starmies, lots of Latios. And there's just like a little tally down here. Jirachi is also used 3 times, but I didn't put that here for some reason. And then you want to come up with... You want to just have one Pokemon in mind to build around, because if you start trying to build a team that just matches up well against this team, he might just bring a team made by, like, X-Ray, for example. Those two are good friends. He might bring a team made by me. I'm Cosine's friend, although my teams are bad, so he wouldn't do that. So you never want to build a ridiculous counter team. You want your team to have a good matchup, but you also just want it to be a solid team that you'll be comfortable using against anybody. And that would be, a point where a lot of people would mess up. They'd try too hard to prepare specifically for what they think their opponent's bringing. And then an example is my friend the Goomy. He used to play NU in tournaments, and he tried to bring a counter-teamy-ish team against Soulgazer, I think it was, and then Soulgazer ended up just bringing a team that FLCL made, and Goomy sort of couldn't deal with the matchup because he was so expecting Soulgazer to bring something that Soulgazer would use, but he brought a different team, and so that's just the perfect example to me of why you shouldn't counter-team. You should just build a team that might have a good matchup, but even if it doesn't have, like, an unlosable matchup, you still give yourself a good chance to win. So then the last thing I've done is start making some more insightful observations. So he never has dark types, which means you might... Oh, well, he has T-Tar a lot, actually, so that's stupid. I just don't consider T-Tar a dark type because I'm dumb. I think Bisharp and Weavile are the dark types in OU, but let's get rid of that. Let's just keep that idea in mind for a minute, because I was thinking Keldeo would be great against a lot of his teams, because he always has Starmie or Latios. They're never on, like, a team together. And once you get rid of them, this time he has a Zoomeril. He does have Slowbro once, so you'll want to be aware that he can do that. But just like a classic Keldeo plus Pursuit team would work well against most of what Cosign's using, because once you get rid of the Keldeo, specific Keldeo counter, you just sort of kill everything with water and fighting. Obviously Taunty can be a Keldeo check, but let's just be real here, Taunty is bad. So yeah, these are some observations. Like Heatran's usually paired with Pharaoh when he uses Heatran, which again, the color coding or team building will help you visualize that. You'll be able to, you know, see some trends in the teams that you can't see from just a text document. And so he uses T-Tar and these steals a lot, so if you use a Lati as your Keldeo switch in, it's probably not going to be good for you because you're going to get Pursuit trapped, or he's going to be able to wall you consistently. So you can either go insane and just run like Dugtrio with 4 attack Lati as I've written down here, or you can just maybe use a Slowbro instead to be safer against Keldeo. But yeah, here's the Keldeo observation that he'd be weak to that if you Pursuit his things. Then if you look back at his teams, he's kind of weak to Weavile. Like, he always has one or more things that can check it a couple of times, but I would be more inclined to use Weavile than T-Tar against what I've seen here, because T-Tar is also walled by these ground things, although you can run like Banded Ice Punch. So again, the more you've played on the ladder, the easier it'll be to see weaknesses in his team. So I haven't played OU much in the last 3 months, and I haven't played competitively for even longer, so it's hard for me to just look at teams and be like, boom, 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 there are all the weaknesses. I can choose any of these I want to build around. But yeah, if this is just 2 Pokemon on your team, you can easily build a fully functional team with these 2 Pokemon. If you start trying to make, like, if you start with this and then you go, oh, if I use this, I'm going to be weak to the Gardevoir he used once. I have to use specially defensive Skarmory. And I mean, even then the team could end up fine, but just, you have to back yourself to be able to win an even matchup. Because if you start trying to create a game that will be won with matchup only, you're basically doing exactly that. You're turning the game into only a matchup thing, whereas you want to win because you prepared better and or played better. Yeah, another thing, like every team always has a ground, so you can exploit them so easily just with like an Ice Punch Lopunny, with Excadrill as your thing to take advantage of the lack of a ground type, or Glaciate Victini, and if you've been playing more than I have, you'll be able to think of like a million more ways to lure those Pokemon, so yes. Also, if you've used like Natural Gift Ground Jirachi, his teams aren't really weak to that, because Heatran, while it would get killed by that, he also has like Lando and Ferrothorn to wall Jirachi pretty well, and Slowbro on this team. Lando T, Ferro, and Starmie to wall it on this team. So that Natural Gift Ground Jirachi would still possibly work as a Heatran lure, and then maybe you could use like Zardex as your sweeper, although Lando T and Heatran are always together, so you've got to be like aware of which combinations your opponent's using, because if you just go, oh hey, if I lure Heatran, Zard is going to beat him, then you will, that won't work if he has Lando T every time he has Heatran. So yes, I think the most important thing is just to prepare a team for your opponent, without turning it into a complete counter team, because if you build a counter team, you're going to have a terrible matchup against any number of normal teams and normal threats. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. You can look for replays. I already showed you how to look for replays, but you can also just like type in their name, so Dan3. So yeah, here we go. He played this game 5 hours ago, and he was using Dark Spam with Diancie, and we got one. The other ones are from a month ago, so that's weird that we had one so recent. This is a blue team. He uses a wide-ish range of stuff by the looks. It's usually a bit more offensive, I suppose. Yep, that's pretty offensive again. So Oh, this is more defensive, but still like relatively offensive. So yeah, that's how I would go about preparing for people. And when I played, I'd in World Cup, I guess I had to play Solwind, and I noticed from his replays that he was weak to Wisp Talonflame, which is the case for a lot of teams. These both have Zapdos, so they're not particularly weak to it. And I was trying to build a good team based on Wisp Talonflame, but then I remembered there was this great team that ABR and Ox the Fox, both of whom will be in OLT3, made, and I decided to just use that, and Talon had a great matchup despite Solwind bringing Rest Manaphy, and that was basically what let me win. And yeah, if you go back through like my tournament replays from SPL and World Cup, I have pretty much good matchups in all of them. So yes, even if you think I am bad, maybe you will think I'm good at preparing based on that. So yep, hope this was helpful. I feel like it was all very obvious, but when I was starting in tournaments, it was so like unclear what I should do. I was just trying to think of like the weirdest teams I could make, and while I ended up using not so weird teams, it would have helped if I knew that you could prepare just by looking at replays and stuff like that. Of course, this is reliant on you knowing what's happening in the metagame and things like that, and how to beat Pokemon. Because if you just like don't have any idea how to deal with Rotom Wash, you're not going to be able to prepare as quickly and efficiently. But yeah, prepare without counter teaming is the most important thing, and you want to build a normal team that will beat what they like to use most often. So yes, if you bring Keldeo and Weavile against this team, you're going to do pretty well just by going for Scald. Weavile doesn't trap Amoonguss all that well, so you want to, you don't want your team to fall apart as soon as they have an Amoonguss, which doesn't mean you should keep building the team so it's specifically prepared for Rotom and Amoonguss. You should just build a team and then test it on the ladder or test it against some friends who you trust. I had never tested my teams, but that was more of a psychological thing. Like, I didn't want to know that my team had lost, because then I would feel less confident when I was playing, so I would just build the team, which usually worked because I was so in touch with the metagame at that time, so I could just, with some degree of confidence, build a team without actually putting it to a test against another team, and I would know that it was prepared for most of the metagame. But I definitely recommend testing your teams and ironing out the weaknesses that way, because if it's easy to forget about Pokemon like Mega Venusaur. You got to remember defensive threats and offensive threats. You need to be aware of how easy it is to exploit Lander ST, because it's the most used Pokemon at the moment. Latios is so used. They're both such flawed Pokemon, but the way the metagame is, you can't use anything else because it's just there's so many things to cover. And what does Latios do? It's a fire resist, very important. Water resist, Keldeo switch in, can remove hazards, can set up Carmines to beat, bulky Clefable reliant teams. It can use Scarf Memento, it can use Trick to beat Chansey. So Memento would help set up like a Dragon Dancer or whatever you want to be your win condition. It's a good switch in for Slowbro, where you can run Spec Sleep Talk, so it switches into Amoonguss and then starts killing things when it should be conceding momentum by going to sleep. So Lati is an extremely useful and versatile Pokemon, but what's wrong with it? It just dies to T-Tar, which is a very common Pokemon paired with the things that Latios is meant to wall. So I guess the point to take is that you can't treat your opponent's team, you can't treat Pokemon as though they're in a vacuum. Like, if you go, oh, my team's so weak to Keldeo, if only I had a Latios, you're going to have a bad time, because they might just bring T-Tar and Keldeo and just win. So this guy's done a good thing here. He's got Azumarill as his second Keldeo switch in, so this, in addition to giving him a backup check if Latios gets pursuited, it also sort of forces them to go for Scald with Keldeo, Whereas if you only have Latios, they might go for Icy Wind, although I don't think Icy Wind Keldeo is really ever necessary, because you can just use a Pursuit user with it, and there it is. But yeah, if you have a Azumarill on your team, they're never going to go for Icy Wind unless they're bad. So you can then switch into Lati every time, or even Hydreigon, expecting the Scald, or like a Ferrothorn if you have that and you're not too worried about it getting burnt. Yeah, I feel like this is going off track a bit. What else is there? Oh, the main other point is not to get shook because you're in an important game and you've never been in this situation before. So, another example from me is when I played Star Master in the first OLT. It was round 3, and I had Zardwai Titar, and so he would switch his Latios in, and then double out expecting my Titar, which I kept bringing in, and he just kept doubling into Heracross, and I had no switch-ins for Heracross, so I lost like 2 Pokemon in the first 5 turns, I think. Anyway, I kept losing Pokemon because I was playing like that, and then he started playing like a bitch, and I got a lot of momentum back straight away. And anyway, there was a really great game. It came down to a 50-50, and yeah, the point is just don't be intimidated. Don't play crazily, because if you just... Your opponent is a good player, most likely. So if you start just playing insanely, you're probably not going to do well. You just need to keep your head. You can make a few obvious plays. You need to be aware that your opponent can probably predict your plays, but this game is just dependent on you sitting there clicking buttons. So even if you are nervous, you should be able to play well anyway, because if you've made it to playoffs, you are a good player. So yeah, don't start playing weirdly just because it's a tournament. You can be more confident that your opponent won't make just dumb ladder plays, but just play sensibly, play roughly how you usually play. And yeah, another thing you can do is watch through if you have like enough time, you can watch through replays and see what your opponent does in certain situations. And you want to know all of this. I think I already mentioned this, but you want to note down what all of the sets are. So where is text edit? You want to know... I'm sure I mentioned this, but yeah. Put down beside each Pokemon, if you have time, what their set is, and as much information as you can be bothered to get. Of course, if you think this is all too try-hard, you don't have to do any of it, but I want to give you more rather than less information. But yeah, you want to know what your opponent likes to do to play around stuff, so that was all fairly obvious there. You note here that he likes Cosine would Willow in that situation, at least in this game, and then just try to stall out the Lando this way, even though he would have died to Stone Edge the other turn. So yeah, Cosine is setting this up to win with Excadrill, I guess, because if he just burns this, Nintendi is very vulnerable to Excadrill. That was a pretty nice double there to Medicham. So Cosine's probably trying to set this up for Excadrill. Nintendi does have Healing Wish on Jirachi, so as long as he keeps Lando alive, he can do well with it. His double switch to Medicham there was smart, because once the Lando had Swords Danced, Cosine wasn't going to leave his Talon in. He's probably switching into Rotom Wash. So yeah, doubling to Medicham was smart, because there are no good fighting resists here, especially with Stealth Rock up. You see Amoonguss takes, 45 from this high jump kick, so yes. When you're playing, don't... A double switch is... every player loves to double switch because it makes you feel like you're in control. It puts your opponent back into their shell. They feel like they've been outplayed and all of that. But if you're doubling into, like... I see so many people... if you have Keldeo in, don't double, because Keldeo is nearly always going to be a threat. I was playing this guy in the ladder last week, and he was using Infernal's... one of Infernal's teams. Turns out Infernal is blue, but he was using... where's the team? this team, and I was using a team that some people gave me, and it was really weak to Surf Lati because it had Heatran as the main Lati switch, and it did have AV Azumarill, but Psyshock is probably a 2-hit KO on that. But this guy, instead of just like attacking with Lati, he kept doubling into stuff, and I would try to analyze his plays, but they just didn't really make sense. You need to know which Pokemon on your team is the one that's going to be doing the breaking, which one's going to be sweeping, all of that. So if you get Keldeo in, and they have a Lati in the back, and you have a Titar, and you double to Titar, that works well if they switch to Lati, but they might predict you to double, even though doubling to Titar is nearly always stupid there. They might predict that, and if they just stay in an Earthquake with their Lando T that you're expecting to force out, what then? You just put yourself in an awful position. But if you just Scald, the Latios comes in and takes damage, then it's either forced to double out, or roost and get attacked by Titar, or like Draco to deal damage to Titar. So you should always Scald in that situation, or Hydro Pump, or whatever. So just try to see things from as far back as possible, because if you get really caught up in like the next 3 turns, you're going to make stupid plays. Like, an expression I would use here is people put blinkers on, or have blinkers on. Blinkers are like these things that horses wear in horse racing so that they don't get distracted by what's going on either side of them. So it's just like these 2 flaps on either side of their head, which stop them from seeing anything else, and they get tunnel vision, which helps them concentrate. But in this game, if you see things like that, you're just going to get wrecked. So, for example, you think Clefable is their Latios switch-in, so you double into your Spadef Jirachi, or your Scarf Jirachi, predicting that, but they switch into Heatran, because that's also a fine Latios switch-in, and you lose momentum by making this double. So, one, why would you ever double to Jirachi there if they had a Jirachi counter in the back? I guess you could then U-turn out and get your thing in, but that risks them staying in with Clefable and just throwing out a Thunder Wave, or whatever. So, don't play like an idiot is another crucial thing. See the whole game. And yeah, that's really all the advice I have. So thanks for watching. Hope this was helpful to someone. And if you have any other questions, leave a comment and I will answer them. But yeah, play the game a lot to learn how to beat Pokemon and how to prepare for Pokemon quickly and how to team build. Learning the team build is really important because you can't do anything with all of this information unless you know how to build a team. So, like, Blunder nearly always just uses teams that ABR makes, which makes him very one-dimensional, and ABR is actually a great builder, so like it's hard to prepare for him because he's very versatile, and that makes him harder to prepare for. But ABR is nearly always weak to Bisharp because he doesn't think it's good. So what I said about the Keldeo, using Keldeo here, it's not because he uses Starmie a lot, it's because his teams are always weak to Keldeo if you do one simple thing. And you want to take advantage of the Pokemon they have, which is done by luring most of the time, or just trapping. But lures are really useful for stuff like that, because you can turn a negative, so for example, if you bring Victini and they bring Heatran, you can turn that into a positive by running like HP Ground or Focus Blast Victini. And that will work a lot of the time. What else was I saying? Jesus Christ. Oh, and you also want to prepare for the Pokemon they have. So if you bring a team with no way to kill Lando T, you're gonna lose. But you also want to prepare for the stuff they don't have. So, you know, like if they just never have anything for Bisharp, if their Bisharp counter is Heatran, you want to bring Bisharp and exploit that. That's dependent on you having used Bisharp or being aware of which Pokemon beat Bisharp. So yeah, playing a lot will help you notice stuff like that, and building a lot will help you get better at building, if that wasn't obvious. But yeah, I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching, and goodbye.